Well, time for that demo. Let us return to our application and bring in support for behaviors. First, we'll create our custom behavior called the event-to-command behavior. Once we have added it, we will add it onto the behaviors collection of the list view so that we can invoke code by tapping on an item in the list. So I now want to be able to click on an item here in the list view and then also trigger code. But we did not have a command property on the list view to do so. So we're going to fix this using behaviors. Let me show you how. Let's start by adding the command we'll want to invoke. It's going to be the by_selected command that I want to invoke when a by is selected in the list view. And just like with the other commands, I'm going to initialize it from the constructor. Now what is different here is that I'm passing in a type parameter of type by. I'll want to know which by was selected in the list view, because I then want to pass that on to the detail screen so it can show the details. So I use the typed version here of command. In the onPy_selected command, I'll then get in the by that was selected. That's this one that you see right here. Now, how do I actually get this command to be invoked? Well, for that, I'll need to bring in a behavior. So I'll add my behaviors in my shared code in the behaviors folder. So I'll add a new folder and I'll call it behaviors. Now, instead of creating the behavior myself, I'm going to drag it in. Go back to the assets folder and under behaviors, you'll find the behavior that we'll use. You'll find two classes in here. Drag these over to the behaviors folder. Now let us take a look at the code. And let's start with the bindable behavior. This is actually a behavior. So as you can see, this class is inheriting from the base behavior class. The base behavior class has a couple of methods that we can override. In the onAttached_to, we're going to write code that will be executed when this behavior is attached onto an object, onto a UI control. In our case, that will be the list view. So here you see that the onAttached_to is overridden, but we are actually going to use another inheriting class, which is called the event-to-command behavior, which does inherit from the bindable behavior in Vue. Now what is this event-to-command behavior going to do? It is going to allow me to specify a UI event and then the Vue model command that I want to invoke. As you can see, there are a couple of attached properties that are being created. I can specify which is going to be the UI event and which is going to be the command we want to invoke. And there are also a couple of other attached properties: command parameter, event args converter, and event args converter parameter. We'll take a look at how they are used in just a minute. The two at the top are the most important ones. They allow me to specify which UI event is going to be linked to which command. I'm going to save you the explanation of all the other code. You can simply reuse this event-to-command behavior in all your applications. So now let us go back to the Py overview view. And in here, in the list view, I'm now going to use my new behavior. In fact, nearly every control has a behaviors collection. So the list view has a behaviors collection. I can attach one or more behaviors to this list view. They will all add extra functionality onto this list view. What am I going to bring in? My own event-to-command behavior. In order for this to work, I need to bring in the namespace for my behaviors. So I'm going to bring in an XML namespace mapping that specifies the prefix behaviors should map to the behaviors namespace. That's the namespace that contains the event-to-command behavior. And now, in the behaviors collection of the list view, I can use my event-to-command behavior. I can now specify that when the item tapped event is triggered in the list view, I want the by_selected command on my Vue model to be invoked. At this point, this will trigger the invocation of the by_selected command on the Vue model. But I need one more thing. I also need to know which by was actually tapped inside of my list view. For that, I need to use a converter. So let's first create a folder where we're going to put our converter. I'm going to call that the converter folder. I head back to the assets, and in there you'll find under converters the item tapped converter. Drag that into your project. Now what is this item tapped converter going to do and why do I need it? Well, let me explain. The item tapped converter is actually going to, let's say, convert the value that is being passed to it into the item passed with the event args. So in other words, event args are going to be passed in, and if that is the case, then I'm going to return the item off of that. I'll explain you in just a second why we need this. So I now need to first instantiate this converter. So in the app XAML, I'll instantiate this converter. So I'll first bring in the mapping for that converter namespace, and then I'll instantiate my item tapped converter to be this local item tapped converter. Let's go back to the XAML, and in here I'll now need to specify that I want to use my converter. And I'll do this as follows. The event args converter parameter was a property, an attached property that is, on my event to command behavior. The event args converter is going to basically convert the event args from the list view item tapped event. We got an item tapped event that contains item tapped event args, and I use my converter to actually convert so that I don't get back the event args themselves, but instead the item that was tapped. In other words, the pi that was tapped. That pi is then passed into my command. And so I will get access to the pi that was tapped inside of my list view. So when I put a breakpoint here and I now run the code, we should actually see here in the command which pi was tapped. Let's see this. So I click on load pies. I click on a strawberry pie. That looks like a very good pie. And there we go, the command is invoked. And the pie that is passed in indeed contains the strawberry pie. So we effectively get access now to the pie that was selected in the list view. That I can now use here to write code that will navigate to the details of that strawberry pie.